If you were abducted into a parallel world and forced to play in the most challenging death games that ever existed, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat every death game in Alice in Borderland Season 2. This man is going to risk his life to escape this place. Several weeks ago, hundreds of people were transported to an alternate world where Tokyo was abandoned. They were forced to compete in terrifying death games, and Arisu here survived 6 different challenges, winning a unique card each time. Since then, the masterminds behind these games have announced there will be a grand finale with 12 more brutal challenges, and if they beat them, they can go back to the real world, but no one has any idea if they're telling the truth. Spotting these massive blimps in the sky, they gather in Shibuya Crossing when its girl Usagi hears something in the distance. That's when the group sees a bunch of cars come driving towards them. They're filled with other players who all get out, hoping to find out what's going on, when suddenly everyone starts getting shot to death. Someone is sniping them with an anti-tank rifle, and the players scatter, running for their lives. Panicking, the survivors head down a main road where dozens of people are trying to escape. The players duck behind some cars, but as they're hiding, they see a blimp flying overhead with a King of Spades card hanging from it. The game must have already started without warning, and Arisu takes the opportunity to try rescuing a wounded player, but notices a hooded figure coming straight for them. Realizing it's the King of Spades, he carries the injured man over to cover, but discovers that he's dead, and they have no hope of outrunning the shooter. Suddenly, a car drives up to them, and their ally Kodai tells them to get inside. The team quickly run into the vehicle, but this shady guy Chishiya has to split up from them when a grenade lands nearby. The survivors drive away as fast as they can, and Arisu explains that in order to beat the King of Spades game, they have to kill the gunman. Suddenly, the shooter drives up and starts firing at them. The team is forced to weave through the streets, dodging obstacles and gunfire, but as they're racing away, they end up crashing and flipping the car over. The group quickly gets out, but the King of Spades won't stop gunning down anyone he sees. With their lives on the line, the survivors run away and split up. Hiding in a building, Arisu's team makes a plan to stay here for the night, gathering whatever supplies they can find, and Kodai heads out with Kuina to get them a new car. That night, Arisu and the climber Usagi scavenge for food at a mini-mart. They start feeling nostalgic for the things they experienced before they were taken to this place, and Arisu insists they make it back home, but the woman reveals that her old life was miserable and doesn't want to return. The man insists things can get better, but the woman is too afraid of returning and quickly walks back to their hiding place. The next morning, Arisu comes up with a plan. There are still other challenges that have yet to be played, and whoever these masterminds are probably won't interfere with each other. That means if they join another game, then they won't be gunned down and have a chance to renew their visas for the Borderlands. It's the only way they can survive this place and continue playing. With the group in agreement, they decide to join the King of Clubs game, but it's not going to get any easier for them. Okay, this is already getting insane. The size and difficulty of these games have just increased massively, and we'll have to be even more clever than usual if we want any chance of surviving. Arisu's solution is to join another game and avoid the gunman altogether, but the problem is that this doesn't really keep them safe. They're still risking their lives in other games, and as long as there's a shooter on the loose, they'll lose precious time they need to strategize for survival outside of the death games. It's also important to point out that the blimp is constantly moving, which means the entire Tokyo area is a horrifying danger zone. With this in mind, I would be focused on killing this guy first before we advance to the rest of the games, and the best way to do this is to lure the man into a trap. If it were me, I would try to use the vertical space of the city to our advantage. Right now, everyone is running away in 2D space, and as long as there are people in front of him to kill, the man won't be looking up, which means we can take him by surprise. If we can throw something on him from above, we might be able to injure him, or at least interrupt his killing spree long enough to tackle him to the ground. As simple as it might seem, even highly advanced urban warfare tactics will use similar models for luring their enemies into choke points where the environment works to their advantage. Working together is our best chance of taking the man down, and that's why I would gather as many people running away as I could, telling them I have a plan and that everyone should follow me. Then, we sprint as far down the road as we can, taking cover in narrow alleyways with buildings on both sides where we can lure him in. From there, we move up to higher floors, wait for him to run out of ammo or reload, and throw heavy objects down on him, interrupting his attack. This man is also wearing a cloak, which blocks out the majority of his peripheral vision. For the boss of a King's game, it's a blind spot that he should know better than to allow, and if we turn this into a 3-dimensional battlefield, we can use this against him and win. Later that day, they head to the port and find a sign telling them no weapons are allowed in the arena. Approaching this table full of bracelets, the group is told that 5 people must enter for the game to start, but one of the bracelets has already been taken. Suddenly, a player calls out to them, and they recognize him as Niraki, the traitor from a previous game. He tried to kill them days ago, and they They insist they won't play with them, but he reveals he's already put on a bracelet. It can't come off no matter what he does, and with no better options, the others decide to join him. After they put on their bracelets, the group enters the arena to find this giant pole in the center of a clearing, and their opponents come walking out to greet them. Suddenly, this nudist introduces himself as Kuma, the king of clubs, and explains that they are citizens of this world. Sharing the rules, he tells them they have 2 hours to steal the other team's points, and whoever has the most by the end wins. Each side starts with 10,000 points and must divide them amongst their teammates before the game begins. The first way to gain points is by battling an opponent, and whoever has the most wins 500 points. Players can also link up to combine their points in a battle. The second way is by finding any of the 6 items hidden around the port. Finally, they can gain 10,000 points by touching the opponent's home base. Someone can stay behind to defend the pole, and if that person maintains contact with their base, they can beat anyone in a battle. People who have already battled or touched their enemy's base must reset their bracelets by returning to their pole, but if an opponent touches them before then, both people will be shocked. Players will die if their point total goes below 0, or their team loses, and with that, the king walks away. The game begins, and Arisu distributes the total, giving the slowest players the most points and the fastest players the fewest, pairing them up to help each other in the game. The defender will stay at home base with the last 100 points remaining. Heading deeper into the arena, Arisu and the martial artist Kuina search for items in the shipping container. Inside, they discover this station, and realizing it's one of the items, the girl quickly presses the button, earning 2,000 points. They turn to leave, but as he closes the door, the king of clubs reveals himself and challenges them to a battle. The kid is impressed by this guy's confidence and decides to take him on alone, but is surprised to see the king only had 2,000 points on his bracelet. The gamer has gained 500 points, and he realizes the king wants to split the total evenly across his team. By the time they return to base, the group is confident they'll win, but it's about to get a lot more intense. In the second round, the team managed to find an item and earn 1,000 points, but that was their biggest mistake. Kodai realizes that the king has arrived with 3 other team members and has them surrounded. It's clear they're aiming for the pole, and the defender touches it, giving himself infinite points to take one of them out, but they don't care. The men sprint for the home base, and 3 of them manage to touch it, gaining 30,000 points. Their friend has failed to make contact, and he says his goodbyes before a laser kills him on the spot. Okay, this opponent is out of his mind. He's way too comfortable in his own skin, but with abs like a Greek god, I can't really blame the man. Having said that, he's clearly at a disadvantage. All of us are fully clothed, while the leader of their team will be clearly more vulnerable to physical harm. Even the strongest of us would still be somewhat distracted by making sure that certain body parts aren't injured or flopping around. And this kind of multitasking is so baked into the human psyche that he'll inevitably have a harder time focusing on the game with 100% of his attention. Now, the good news is that the opponents haven't played this game yet, and even though they invented it, a real advantage would only come through experience in the game itself. For example, you might think that a board game designer would know every aspect of the game they developed, but they still need to go through hundreds of rounds of player testing to evaluate if the mechanics are balanced. This game has literally never been played before, which levels the playing field massively, and it means we're more likely to win if we look for flaws in the game itself. For starters, I would have the strongest players find an opponent and engage in battle, but regardless of whether we win or lose, we should use our other hand to grab their wrist without letting go so they can't break free. This keeps us engaged in battle, and then we can try to drag the player into one of these shipping containers against their will. There aren't any rules against physical violence, and if we touch someone a second time, both of us will get shocked. With this in mind, the smartest thing to do is touch the player again inside the container to shock him into submission, have our teammate drag us back out, and lock the doors using Niragi's belt here. Using this strategy not only removes one of their players from being able to protect their base, but according to the rules, it also sets our playing status to inactive. As counterintuitive as it might seem, this is a huge advantage, because if we all decide to rush at our opponent's base, we can't get killed when we're touched. This one detail can break the game, because in the first round, the majority of the players will be expecting to encounter us in the maze and engage in battles instead of defending their home turf. Defense is the least likely strategy early in the game, because it's more natural to venture out exploring the game's mechanics. That's why after locking up one of their players, the smartest decision is for everyone to rush into the enemy's base, and if at least one of us is inactive, that person can lead the charge, drawing the defender's attention, which leaves the rest of the players free to touch the pole without risking their lives. With that, Arisu's team returns back to base frustrated by their mistake, and to make matters worse, they only have 1 hour left. They split up to look for items, but as they're searching, their opponents beat them to it. The score difference is growing, and Arisu realizes they're playing like they have too much to lose. Finding courage, the man tells his teammates they should all raid the king's base, and insists they can't be afraid to take risks or they'll never win. It inspires the others to join in, and with everyone in agreement, they execute their plan. Later, the enemies wait for Arisu's team to show up with the others, but suddenly, the climber appears on top of a shipping container and challenges one of them to come after her. The girl takes takes off, and Gouken here decides to chase the player, leaving 3 people protecting the base. That's when Kuina arrives along with 2 other teammates, making it clear they're going to get revenge. The King of Clubs and his allies touch their home base, ready to defend it before Arisu's team rushes towards them. The martial artist lures her enemy away from the pole, and Arisu baits the king into reaching out for him, realizing too late that he's inactive. The bracelets shock them both, and the men collapse to the ground. That leaves the traitor against the woman, and he quickly spits out a mouthful of blood at her. It gives him the opening he needs to touch the pole, and he manages to reach it before she can stop him, earning his team 10,000 points. Their plan is working, and Niragi here takes advantage of his inactive status, rushing at another opponent to shock him. Kuina makes a break for the pole, but she's suddenly kicked away and loses 500 points from the contact. There's now a 3,000 point difference, and all the enemy team needs to do to win is defend their base until time runs out. Feeling hopeless, the group returns to their base again, and the climber decides to search for the last item. She looks through the shipping containers and manages to find it, earning her team 2,500 points. That means there's now a 500 point difference, and in an act of desperation, Arisu insists he'll return to attack the enemy's home base. They just need to win a single battle to defeat the others, and he rushes away, knowing there's only 10 minutes left before they die. Meanwhile, the climber finds the traitor and insists they work together in a battle, but he's given up all hope and viciously attacks the girl. She's seconds away from being killed when suddenly the man gets dragged off by Arisu, who brutally beats him up. Horrified, he brings the girl back to home base, where there's nobody around, and goes looking for the defender, finding the man trying to force the bracelet off of his wrist, but he's not strong enough. The player explains that he's carrying 10,100 points on it, and if Arisu secretly carries this with him, he can combine it with his own point total. It'll guarantee they can win a battle, and since there are no rules for removing the bracelet, it should work. With time running out and no better ideas, Arisu sacrifices his friend to win. Okay, this is absolutely brutal, but these players are finally playing this game like it's supposed to be played. With their lives on the line, getting your hand injured might be worth the risk if it means winning the game. But if they had taken a moment to think things through more carefully, they'd realize there was a better option at their disposal. Moments ago, Arisu caught his teammate betraying Usagi, and it definitely means that he's no longer reliable to include in their game strategy. As devastating as this is, it might actually improve their chances of winning, because it means they can use him in ways they would never have considered before. Instead of maiming the hand of a trustworthy teammate, the smarter approach would be to go and find the traitor and break his hand instead, so that we can pocket his bracelet and use it to win a battle, saving everyone's lives. We already know that Niragi was able to touch the pole as well, so he would have over 10,000 points in his bracelet, giving us more than enough to defeat the King of Spades. This way, we can still use Kodai to defend our home base and the other opponents, while we're looking for someone to defeat with our 8 remaining minutes. Now, there's no guarantee we can corner another player in time to battle them, and with 2 players that are too injured to continue, our chances of pulling off a victory gets a lot more difficult. The good news is that we still have 1 player left who can help us as a contingency while we enact our plan. Kuina here isn't the strongest or fastest player, but she is the most athletic and has the best fighting skills of anyone in the group. The problem is that she has the fewest amount of points among anyone left playing, but this is exactly why I would have her defend the base instead of Kodai. She would be able to use her agility and martial arts movements to defend multiple attackers, just in case they try touching the pole again to seal their victory. Even though Kodai here is injured, he would be able to use his 10,100 points more effectively to help us corner our opponents from within the maze so that we can trap someone into losing a battle. Kodai manages to remove his bracelet, and Arisu runs to confront the King of Clubs. He finds the man watching the harbor and tells him that he's given up, asking the man to shake his hand. The guy warns him that he'll lose the battle and get killed, but the kid insists he wants to die with honor by facing a worthy opponent. Seeing this, the kid decides to grant Arisu's last request, and they shake hands as men, but that was his biggest mistake. They enter a battle, and he sees that the kid has 14,950 points in his bracelet, making him the winner. The plan worked, and the player earned exactly what he needed to win. The King of Clubs has been defeated, and Arisu takes the opportunity to ask if they'll return back to the real world by winning every game, but the man simply tells him that he was a former player too, and should trust his instincts. With that, the game ends, and every single member of the enemy team gets shot, making that 1 game down with 11 more to go. Meanwhile, across the city, this man arrives at a prison and puts a metal collar around his neck, before walking upstairs to join several other players who have gathered for a game. That's when a monitor turns on, welcoming them to the Jack of Hearts challenge called Prison Cell, as it breaks down the rules. All they have to do is guess what card suit has appeared on the back of their collars, but they're not allowed to see it themselves and have 1 hour per round to figure it out. They must then enter a prison cell and say out loud which suit they think they have, but players who guess wrong will be eliminated. The suit will change every round, but there's one final twist. The Jack of Hearts is playing the game among them, and in order to beat the game, they have to get him eliminated. They're not allowed to use violence to kill people, and with the rules out of the way, the players start splitting up to find out what's on their collars. This player approaches the shady guy Chishia, asking him for help, and the man points out he shouldn't trust strangers so easily. He then directs his attention to this couple in the hallway, deducing that they're in a close relationship and have a good chance to stay alive. That's when he spots these two guys talking. The man in the blue jacket starts psychoanalyzing the player before insisting they team up. Relieved, the guy accepts, and neither of them realize they're hiding terrible secrets. That's when this girl approaches the shady guy and the stranger, asking if they want to work together with her team. They agree, and the group starts revealing each other's suits before they finally enter their cells for the round to end. As soon as Chishia walks inside, the door locks shut behind him and he guesses Diamond. The man has gotten it right, and everyone walks out of their rooms with no casualties as the second round starts. The team is about to reveal each other's suits again when someone gets thrown across the floor, and this gangster walks away, demanding he tell him what he has. Suddenly, the strange man approaches the player, whispering in his ear to lie about his card suit, and he follows his instructions, telling the gangster he's got clubs. As soon as the man leaves, the girl approaches the guy and invites him to join her group, not knowing that she's one of the most dangerous players of them all. Okay, this is already terrifying. We have nobody inside this game we can trust, and to make things worse, we aren't allowed to see our own collars. That means even if we figured out how to create a mirror to see the suit on the back of our necks, we would get eliminated from the game. The only way to play is by trusting others, and if you've seen pretty much any video on this channel, you would know that this is easily one of my weakest character traits. That being said, the game won't stop until either all the players are dead or the Jack of Hearts dies, and with this in mind, the smartest approach here is to work together and deduce who that person is before too many of us get eliminated. Now, the Jack of Hearts isn't going to rock the boat if he doesn't have to, because telling the truth keeps us here longer, and it's playing right into the mastermind's hands. The good news is that we can actually use this against him. That's why if it were me, I would wait until enough people have been eliminated so that when there are fewer players, we can work together to identify the Jack. Instead of splitting up into groups and pairs to find out what our suits are, I would propose that we use the hour we have in between rounds to interrogate each person as a group, trying to catch someone in a lie. This effectively turns the scenario into a werewolf game, where the goal is to find the killer hiding among us as a team.